So today we're going to be talking about different types of observational studies and experiments. Yeah.
I don't have batteries.
Different observational studies and experiments, the difference between the two, and then we're going to start talking about different ways to choose a sample for your experiment or observational study. So first, the different types of ways that we can obtain data. There's 4 main ways. The first is called a census. This is just a big list that has the entire population on it along with some characteristics. So it's a big list with entire population along with some characteristics. So there's like the U.S. Census that they do every few years, and they ask questions like how many people are living in your household, how many years have you lived here, what's your household income, stuff like that. So the census has all of that information. Censuses, I'm not sure what the plural is. They are kind of rare to come by and they're difficult to get on your own. So if a census already exists, then it's helpful to use. But it can be very time consuming to create a census on your own because usually populations are a pretty big group of people and it can take a lot of time to go through everybody. Another source where you can get your data from is an existing source. So this is just somebody already compiled a list with all of the information you need. So if a list or a source already exists, then use it. So you don't have to try to create your own source if it already exists. It can make your life easier, can take less time. So if a source already exists that you're able to use, then using it would be your best option. The third way that we can get data is called survey sampling. So survey sampling is used in research. You're just trying to obtain data. You're not doing an experiment. You're just gathering information without trying to change anything about your situation. So it's used in research. With no attempt to influence the variable in question. Okay, so you're just asking questions, you're getting answers, you're observing what's happening, you're not trying to change anything, you're not trying to influence any outcome. So polling data, like who did you vote for? It's something that they already happened, they're just relaying you that information. Data obtained using this method from a survey leads to what's called an observational study, which we'll talk about in a second. So an observational study, as the name suggests, is basically where you're just observing a sample or a population. You're not doing anything to change the environment. So it measures characteristics of a population by studying with no attempt to change. So this is where you, as the person conducting the study, you are just observing something that either has already happened or you're just gathering, you're just asking questions and getting responses. but you're not trying to change anything. You're not doing I wonder what happens if we do this. It's just like, I wonder what people are thinking, or I wonder what has happened here. Okay, the opposite, basically, of an observational study is a designed experiment. This is where you are introducing some sort of treatment to the individuals in your sample, and you're seeing how that treatment affects people. So you are trying to change something. You're introducing a change to your sample. So the designed experiment applies a treatment to the individuals in your sample. So the individuals are just the people in your experiment. And try to isolate the effects of one variable. So a popular design experiment is like when they're testing new drugs. So they'll find a bunch of people that have the similar issue, and then they'll give this group, one group drug A, one group drug B, one group get a placebo. So they're giving them a drug, that's the treatment they're applying, and then they'll measure the results after that. Okay, so a little asterisk here. The researcher is able to control factors that influence the experimental units. So the experimental units are just the individuals in the experiment. So again, observational study, you're just observing. You're not doing anything to change the situation. Designed experiment, you are applying a treatment to your people in your group. So on the next page, we have two examples of two different situations. One is an observational study, and one is a designed experiment. So take a minute and talk with the people around you to determine which is which. All right, so for the first one, the farmer wanted to test two fertilizers, so he gave half of his plants fertilizer 1, the other half fertilizer 2, kept everything else the same, and then weighed tomatoes at the end. Is this a designed experiment or an observational study? Which one? This is a designed experiment because he is, they're receiving a fertilizer. He is giving fertilizer to the tomato plants. He is applying the treatment of fertilizer. So this is a designed experiment. Which means letter B is the observational study. So even though they're seeing how smoking and lung cancer are related, the researcher did not give the individual cigarettes and say, here, smoke. They found people that had already been smoking for a long time and then did their tests on them. So they didn't hand them the cigarettes. They were looking at something that had already happened. So that's why that's an observational study. Okay, so that's the important distinction. You have to know if the researcher themselves are doing anything to the sample, the people that they're looking at. Okay, we're going to get into some types of sampling. We're going to focus on simple random sampling today. So when we're sampling, the goal is to obtain individuals for your study, so either the observational study or an experiment, in such a way that accurate information about a population can be obtained. So in your sample, since it's a smaller group from your population, you want that smaller group to represent your population well, or else it won't give you very realistic or accurate results. So there's 4 basic sampling techniques. We're just focusing on simple random sampling today. This is the most basic survey design, hence the name simple random. Sometimes it's also just called random sampling, so those mean the same thing. To take a simple random sample, a sample of size lowercase n, that just represents the number of people in your sample. And you're taking that sample from a population of size capital N. So again, the sample is just your group in your survey or your experiment. The population is the big group, that's everybody. So capital N, the big letter is the bigger number. The lowercase n, the little letter, is the smaller number. So this sample size of lowercase n obtained from a population of size uppercase n is obtained through simple random sampling if every possible sample size of size n, lowercase n, has an equally likely chance of occurring. So that just means everybody in your population has an equal chance of being chosen. Okay. How to obtain the simple random sample. You first need to have a list of your entire population. And you'll number them from 1 to capital N, so just every member in your population has a unique number assigned to them. Your list doesn't have to be in any order, everybody just has to have a number. And then once you have your list, then you're just going to randomly choose your sample size, which is lowercase n, so n individuals, from your list using the random integer generator on your calculator. Okay, so we will talk about how to do that random sample after lunch, but just one last thing. The frame down here, a frame is just another name for the list of your entire population. So the list that you're using to get your random sample from. So if you look on the last page here, we have the directions or the instructions on how to obtain a simple random sample using your graphing calculator. So there's two parts to this, to obtaining a random sample. The first is when we seed the calculator. When we do this seed, if we all have the same seed, it allows us to all get the same random numbers on our calculator, which is what I use for when we have like quizzes and tests. I tell you what seed to use so that we all get the same answers. If we ever want to have different random numbers, then we would use different seeds. So again, this part is to make sure we all have the same, if we have the same seed, or different if we have a different seed. Random numbers. So it's important that you know how to do the seed, because like I said, on tests and quizzes, you're going to have to do that to get the same thing. Yeah. Okay. The second part is instructions on how to actually get your random numbers. So the second part is to get your random numbers. Okay, so we're going to do an example. So we're going to follow these directions together. So you're going to need your calculators. First, just to make sure, we only have to do this once, but just to make sure that all of our calculators are in the same spot. Everybody together, can you hit second and then the plus sign? We all got to do the second plus, go down to number 7, which is reset. And then choose number 2, defaults. And then, yes, you want to reset. So again, second, plus sign, second plus sign, number 7, which is reset, number 2, which is defaults, and number 2, which is reset. Just to make sure we're all in the same spot. So now we can follow the directions. So for example 2, we want to obtain a random sample of size lowercase n equals 5. So this is telling you that you're going to need to get 5 random numbers from your calculator. And we have this list. So remember, the first thing we need to do when we're doing a random sample is we need to number our population. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So we have 16 total people in our population. So we're going to end up choosing 5 of them. So the very first thing we want to do is put the seed in our calculator. So if we look at our first set of directions, if you hit, in this case I'm telling you the seed to use, so we want to use a seed of 92. So you type 92 into your calculator, just on the main screen. And then you're going to press the stow button, which is right above on. It says stow with a little arrow. Some of you I know have like worn out keys, so stow is the one button above on. Hit that, a little arrow should pop up next to your 92. Then you're going to press the math button, which is 2 buttons below the second. You're going to go over to the PRB menu and select that first option, which says RAND. Hit enter. So on your screen you should have 92, arrow pointing to RAND, then hit enter, and 92 should pop up on your screen like as the answer. Does everybody get that far? Okay, so once that pops up, now that means your seed is set in your calculator. So now we can, so I'm going to type that in here, what it looks like. So you would type 92, the little arrow, and RAND. And now we need to choose our people. So in order to get our random numbers from our calculator, if you hit the math button again, so 2 below second, go over to the PRB menu one more time, and then select option number 5, which says RAND INT for random integer. Hit enter just once so it shows up on your screen. So depending on the calculator you have, some of you have RAND INT that shows up with a parenthesis. Some of you have kind of like a list thing where you have to type in numbers on a list. So if you have the parentheses, you need to tell it how many individuals you have in your population. So you're always going to start with 1. And then you have to use the comma button, which is right above 7. And then you would put your total number in the population. So in this case, we have 16. So you type 16. So you should have RAND INT 1, 16, close the parentheses, and hit enter. And you keep hitting enter until you get as many random numbers as you need. If you have the list option, the lower number would be number 1. The upper number would be your total population, so 16. So you just have upper or lower is 1, upper is 16, and then hit paste, I think is the option. And then you should all get 10 as your first random number. Did anybody not get 10? It's important that we fix this now because that means, okay. So you should get, you got to just keep hitting enter until you get your, because we need 5 random numbers. So I got number 10, which will be Jessica. I got number 12, which will be Laura. If you get the same random number again, you already have chosen that person, so you can't choose them again. So you just skip it, go on to the next one. So you get number 3, just keep hitting enter. $14 and 6. Now you guys can practice. You can choose any seed value that you want. So when we did here, like the 92 bestow rand. You can choose your favorite number. It doesn't have to be 92, so just choose your favorite number. Literally, it can be any number. To get your seed, and then choose another group of 6 individuals from this population for your sample. This is just a practice using your calculator. So you have to have your seed, and then do your random integers. I will come around if you have questions.